My parents drained my college fund to support my pregnant sister, and tried to force me into motherhood. But I hit back with a truth they never escaped. I never thought that saving every penny to chase my dreams would become the biggest trap of my life, until I discovered my family had been planning to sacrifice me all along. My name is Emily Carter, and I'm 22 years old. For the past 4 years, I've been working 2 part-time jobs while studying pharmacy at State University, carefully saving every dollar I could for my final year tuition and internship expenses. I lived on ramen noodles, walked everywhere to save gas money, and hadn't bought new clothes in over 2 years. But it was all worth it because I was just months away from achieving my dream of becoming a pharmacist. I should have known something was wrong when my parents started having those hushed conversations that stopped the moment I walked into the room. My mother would quickly change the subject, and my father would suddenly find something fascinating on his phone. But I was too focused on my studies and work to pay much attention to their weird behavior. My younger sister Madison had always been the golden child. At 20, she'd never held a real job, never worried about money, and never had to sacrifice anything for anyone. While I was breaking my back working at a grocery store and tutoring center, Madison was out partying with friends, her expenses magically covered by our parents. I told myself it didn't matter. I was building character, learning responsibility, preparing for my future. Then Madison dropped the bombshell that changed everything. "I'm pregnant," she announced at dinner one Tuesday evening, her voice surprisingly casual for someone delivering life-altering news. The silence that followed was deafening. My fork froze halfway to my mouth as I watched my parents' faces cycle through shock, disappointment, and then, strangely, a kind of resigned acceptance that made my stomach turn. "How far along?" my mother asked quietly. 4 months. "And the father?" Madison shrugged. "Some guy from college. He's not interested in being a dad." I expected my parents to be furious, to lecture her about responsibility and consequences. Instead, my father reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "We'll figure this out, sweetheart. Families stick together." That night, I heard them talking in their bedroom until nearly 3 in the morning. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was serious, planning something big. A cold dread settled in my stomach, though I couldn't quite articulate why. Over the next few weeks, I watched my family transform around Madison's pregnancy. Suddenly, she needed a new car because her old one wasn't safe enough for a baby. The spare bedroom needed to be completely renovated into a nursery. She needed prenatal vitamins, maternity clothes, and a substantial emergency fund for medical expenses. "Where's all this money coming from?" I asked my mother one afternoon after watching her return from yet another shopping trip loaded with baby supplies. "Don't worry about it, honey," she said, not meeting my eyes. "We've been saving for years. It's time to invest in family." But something felt wrong. My parents had never been big savers, and they'd always been tight with money when it came to my needs. When I needed textbooks, I had to work extra shifts. When I needed a laptop for school, I saved for months. But suddenly they had thousands of dollars to throw around for Madison? The truth hit me like a freight train on a Thursday morning in November. I was checking my savings account online, making sure I had enough for spring semester tuition, when I saw the balance, $247. $247. Where there should have been $25,000, my hand started shaking as I scrolled through the transaction history. Withdrawal after withdrawal, all authorized with my parents' names as joint account holders. They'd been systematically draining my college fund for the past 2 months. Car down payment for Madison, $8,000. Home renovation, $12,000. Medical expenses, $3,500. Family emergency fund, $2,000. Every penny I'd saved, every sacrifice I'd made, every dream I'd carefully built, gone. I called the bank, hoping desperately that there had been some mistake. But no, the withdrawals were all legitimate. My parents had legal access to the account since I'd opened it as a minor, and they'd exercised that right to clean me out completely. I confronted them that evening after Madison had gone upstairs. I walked into the living room where they were watching TV and placed my laptop on the coffee table, the bank statement glowing on the screen. "I want an explanation," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the rage boiling inside me. My mother's face crumpled with guilt, but my father just sighed like I was being unreasonable. "Emily, sweetie, sit down. Let us explain. Explain how you stole $25,000 from me? We didn't steal anything, my father said firmly. That money was in a family account. We used it for a family emergency. A family emergency? Madison getting pregnant because she was irresponsible is not my emergency. She's your sister, my mother said, tears starting to form. She needs our help right now. You're young, you can always take out student loans or apply for scholarships. But Madison needs support now. I stared at them in disbelief. I worked 60 hours a week for 4 years to save that money. I haven't bought new clothes, I haven't gone on vacation. I haven't done anything fun because I was focused on my education. And you just took it? We borrowed it, my father corrected. We'll pay you back when we can. When? When exactly will you have $25,000 to pay me back? He couldn't answer that because we all knew the truth. They would never pay me back. In their minds, they'd already justified taking my money as a family contribution to Madison's situation. You could have asked me, I said, my voice breaking. You could have explained the situation and asked if I wanted to help. Instead, you went behind my back and stole my future. We knew you'd say no, my mother admitted quietly. So you decided for me. You decided that my dreams matter less than Madison's mistakes. It's not about whose dreams matter more, my father said, getting defensive. It's about family priorities. Madison is in a vulnerable situation. She needs us. And what about me? What about my vulnerable situation? What about my need to finish school and start my career? You're stronger than Madison, my mother said. You've always been the responsible one. You'll find a way. That phrase, you'll find a way, hit me like a slap in the face. It was their way of saying that my struggles didn't matter because they expected me to handle everything alone, while Madison got unlimited support for her poor choices. I can't afford tuition without that money, I said. I'll have to drop out. You can take a semester off, work more hours, save up again, my father suggested, as if pausing my entire life trajectory was no big deal. And Madison? What's her plan while I'm sacrificing my education to fix the mess you created by stealing from me? She's going to focus on having a healthy pregnancy and preparing for motherhood, my mother said defensively, so she gets to focus on her future while mine gets put on hold indefinitely? The conversation continued for another hour, but it became clear that my parents had already made their decision. Madison was the priority, and I was expected to be understanding and supportive of that decision, regardless of how it destroyed my own plans. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to process the betrayal. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the fundamental realization that my parents had never seen me as equally deserving of support and investment. I was the strong one, the responsible one, the one who could handle anything. Madison was the fragile one who needed protection and resources, but the worst was yet to come. 3 weeks later, Madison made another announcement that left me speechless. I've been thinking, she said at breakfast, and I don't think I'm ready to be a mom. My parents exchanged glances across the table. This wasn't news to them. What do you mean, honey? My mother asked gently. I mean, I don't want to raise a baby. I'm too young, I have too many things I want to do. I was thinking, maybe Emily could take care of it. I choked on my orange juice. Excuse me? You've always been good with kids, and you're so responsible. Plus, you'll be done with school soon and ready to settle down. Madison, I'm not done with school. I had to drop out because you and Mom and Dad stole my tuition money, remember? That's temporary, my father interjected. You'll get back on track. So let me understand this correctly, I said, my voice getting dangerously quiet. You steal my college fund to support Madison's pregnancy, and now you want me to raise her baby too. It's not like that, my mother said quickly. Madison just needs some time to figure things out. Maybe she could come back into the picture later. This is insane. You're all insane. Madison started crying. I knew you wouldn't understand. I knew you'd be selfish about this. I'm selfish? I'm selfish for not wanting to raise a baby that isn't mine with money I don't have because you stole my education fund? Keep your voice down, my father warned. And stop saying we stole from you. This is a family matter, and families help each other. Families help each other equally, Dad. This isn't help, this is exploitation. I stormed out of the house and drove around for hours trying to calm down. When I came back, I found my parents waiting in the living room with serious expressions. We need to talk, my mother said. If this is about me raising Madison's baby, the answer is no. Just hear us out, my father said. Madison is going through a lot right now. Pregnancy hormones, fear about the future, anxiety about becoming a mother so young. She needs our support, not judgment. I'm not judging her for being pregnant. I'm judging all of you for expecting me to fix the consequences of her choices with my life and my money. It would just be temporary, my mother said. Until Madison gets on her feet. How temporary? A year? 5 years? Until the kid turns 18? They couldn't answer that either because they hadn't thought it through. They just knew that Madison didn't want the responsibility, and they automatically assumed I would pick up the slack, like I always did. The next few months were a nightmare. Madison's pregnancy progressed, and with it, the family's expectations that I would step into the maternal role. They started referring to the baby as your nephew when talking to me, as if the relationship was already decided. They asked me to attend prenatal appointments, to help set up the nursery, to read parenting books. I refused all of it. You're being incredibly selfish, my mother said after I declined to go to a baby shower that Madison's friends were throwing. This baby is going to be part of our family whether you like it or not. Then you and Dad can figure out how to take care of it. It's not my responsibility. We're too old to raise a baby, Emily. We need your help. You weren't too old to spend my college money on baby supplies. The situation reached a breaking point in March, when Madison was 8 months pregnant. I came home from my shift at the grocery store to find my parents sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers. "What's all this?" I asked. "Legal documents," my father said. "Guardianship papers for the baby. We need you to sign them." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're kidding, right? Madison wants to make sure the baby is taken care of properly. Since she's not ready to be a mother, and we're not young enough to handle a newborn, the logical choice is you. The logical choice is adoption. There are thousands of couples who actually want children and can provide for them properly. We're not giving our grandchild to strangers," my mother said firmly. "Then figure out another solution, because I'm not signing anything. Emily, be reasonable. This baby is going to be born whether you cooperate or not. Don't you want to make sure it has the best possible life? The best possible life would be with parents who actually want it and planned for it, not with a reluctant aunt who is blackmailed into guardianship." "We're not blackmailing you," my father said. "We're asking you to step up for your family. After you sabotaged my ability to support myself or anyone else by stealing my education money." The argument went in circles, but I held firm. I would not sign those papers. Madison gave birth on a rainy Tuesday in April. I was at work when my mother called to tell me the news. She was crying with joy, talking about how beautiful the baby was, how perfect and healthy. I felt nothing but dread. I visited the hospital that evening, more out of curiosity than family obligation. The baby was indeed beautiful, a tiny girl with dark hair and Madison's nose. But what struck me most was Madison's expression as she held her daughter. There was no maternal glow, no instant bonding that people talk about. She looked like she was holding a stranger's child that someone had handed to her temporarily. "Have you picked a name?" I asked. "Lily," Madison said without enthusiasm. "Mom chose it. That told me everything I needed to know." Madison had already mentally checked out of motherhood. 3 days later, I got the call that changed everything. I was at home studying. I'd managed to enroll in one class that semester using the last of my savings, when my phone rang. It was my mother, and she was crying hysterically. "She's gone," my mother sobbed. "Madison's gone." "What do you mean, gone?" "She left the baby on our doorstep and disappeared." "There's a note." I drove to my parents' house in a daze. The baby was in the living room, crying in her car seat, while my parents stood around looking shell-shocked. My father handed me a folded piece of paper. The note was short and devastating. "Mom and Dad, I tried to tell you I wasn't ready for this. I can't be a mother right now, maybe someday, but not now. Emily is the best person I know, and she'll take good care of Lily. I need some time to figure out my life. Please don't try to find me. I'll contact you when I'm ready. Love, Madison." I read the note twice, my anger building with each word. "She doesn't get to decide this," I said. "She doesn't get to abandon her child and volunteer me as a replacement mother." "Emily, please," my mother begged. "We can't take care of a newborn. We're too old, we don't have the energy. And you're so good with children." "No." The word came out harder than I intended. "Absolutely not. But she's family. She's your niece. She's Madison's daughter. Madison chose to have her, and now Madison is choosing to abandon her. That's not my fault, and it's not my responsibility to fix." You can't just let a baby suffer because you're angry at Madison. I'm not letting anyone suffer. I'm refusing to enable Madison's irresponsible behavior by cleaning up her mess for her. My father stepped forward. Emily, this isn't about Madison anymore. This is about an innocent child who needs a home. Then find her one. There are proper channels for this. Social services, adoption agencies, foster families who are actually prepared to take care of children. We're not putting our granddaughter in the system, my mother said firmly. Then you take care of her. You spent my college money on this situation, so you figure out how to handle the consequences. The baby was still crying, and the sound was breaking my heart. But I couldn't let my emotions override my logic. Taking on this responsibility would mean sacrificing what was left of my future, and I'd already sacrificed too much. We can't afford to raise a baby on our retirement income, my father said, and we don't have the physical stamina. Emily, you're young, you're capable. I'm broke because you stole my money. I'm behind in school because you prioritized Madison over my education. I'm working 2 minimum wage jobs just to survive because you destroyed my financial stability. What exactly about my situation makes you think I'm capable of raising a child? The conversation continued for hours, but I didn't budge. Finally, exhausted and emotionally drained, I made my position clear. I'm going to give you 24 hours to figure this out. If you haven't contacted social services by tomorrow evening, I will. This baby deserves better than being used as a pawn in Madison's drama or your guilt trip. I left them with the crying baby and drove home, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was done being the family scapegoat. I was done sacrificing my dreams for people who didn't appreciate or reciprocate that sacrifice. I was done being manipulated by guilt and obligation. I opened my laptop and started typing. I told the whole story, every detail, every betrayal, every manipulation. I included screenshots of my bank statements showing the unauthorized withdrawals. I included photos of Madison's social media posts from the past year, showing her partying and living carelessly while my parents funded her lifestyle with my college money. I posted it all on Facebook, Twitter, and Reddit. I tagged family members, family friends, and mutual acquaintances. I wasn't trying to destroy anyone, but I was done protecting people who had refused to protect me. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Comments started pouring in within minutes. Friends, classmates, coworkers, and complete strangers expressing outrage at my family's behavior. The post was shared hundreds of times within hours. People were calling my parents' treatment of me financial abuse. They were calling Madison's abandonment of her child unconscionable. They were calling the expectation that I would fix everything manipulative and unfair. But the most powerful responses came from other people who had been in similar situations. The responsible children who had been exploited by their families. The siblings who had been asked to sacrifice for the problem child, the young adults who had been parentified and manipulated. You don't owe them your life, one woman wrote. I gave up my 20s raising my sister's kids, and I regret it every day. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, another person commented. It's necessary. They stole your future and then asked you to be grateful for the privilege of fixing their mistakes. My phone started ringing that evening. Friends, extended family members, even strangers who had seen the posts and wanted to offer support. But I didn't answer. I was emotionally exhausted and needed time to process everything. The next morning I woke up to dozens of missed calls and messages. My parents had been bombarded with calls from family members demanding explanations. My Aunt Sarah had apparently given my father a particularly brutal lecture about financial abuse and manipulation. But the most surprising message came from Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the director of a nonprofit organization that provided scholarships to students who had overcome significant obstacles. Emily, her voicemail said, I saw your story online, and I'd like to talk to you about some opportunities that might help you get back on track with your education. Please call me when you get a chance. I called her back immediately. Your story really resonated with me, Dr. Walsh said. We see a lot of young people who have been exploited by their families, and we have resources specifically designed to help them rebuild their lives. I'd like to offer you a full scholarship to complete your pharmacy degree, plus living expenses and counseling support. I started crying. After months of feeling hopeless and trapped, someone was offering me a way out. There is one condition, Dr. Walsh continued. You'd need to relocate to complete your degree at a partner university in another state. Sometimes the best way to heal from family trauma is to get some physical distance. That's not a condition, I said through my tears. That's a blessing. Within 2 weeks, I had accepted the scholarship, found a small apartment near the university, and started planning my move. My parents tried calling repeatedly, but I wasn't ready to talk to them. I needed to focus on rebuilding my life. The day before I left town, I stopped by their house one last time. I wanted to see the baby, not because I felt responsible for her, but because I wanted closure. My parents looked exhausted. The baby had been placed with a temporary foster family while social services worked on finding a permanent placement. Madison still hadn't contacted anyone. "We made mistakes," my mother said quietly. "We know that now. You made choices," I corrected. "You chose Madison over me, repeatedly. You chose to steal my money instead of asking for help. You chose to expect me to fix problems I didn't create. We were trying to keep the family together," my father said. "No, you were trying to avoid the consequences of enabling Madison's irresponsible behavior. And you were willing to sacrifice my future to do it. What can we do to make this right?" my mother asked. I thought about that for a moment. You can learn from this. You can stop expecting one child to sacrifice for another. And you can let Madison face the real consequences of her choices instead of always trying to cushion her from reality. "Will you ever forgive us?" "Maybe," I said honestly. "But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean going back to the way things were." I hugged them goodbye, not because I wasn't angry anymore, but because I was choosing to leave with love instead of hate. 6 months later, I was thriving in my new life. The scholarship had allowed me to not only complete my degree, but to excel in ways I never could have imagined when I was stressed about money and family drama. I was working at a clinical rotation at a children's hospital, and I loved every challenging, rewarding day. I got updates about my family through my Aunt Sarah. The baby, Lily, had been adopted by a wonderful couple who had been trying to have children for years. Madison had finally contacted my parents, but only to ask for money. They had refused for the first time in her life. She was apparently working at a restaurant in another state and figuring things out. My parents had sold their house and downsized to a small apartment, using the proceeds to pay off debts and start rebuilding their retirement savings. They asked my aunt to pass along messages of apology and regret, but I wasn't ready to respond. The most important thing I learned through this entire experience was that family isn't just about blood relations. It's about mutual respect, support, and sacrifice. Real family members don't exploit each other's love and loyalty. They don't steal from each other or manipulate each other with guilt. I also learned that saying no isn't selfish when you're protecting yourself from people who would take advantage of your kindness. Setting boundaries isn't cruel when those boundaries protect you from being exploited. As I walked across the stage at graduation, diploma in hand, I thought about the path that had led me there. The betrayal and heartbreak had been devastating, but they had also freed me from a toxic dynamic that would have trapped me forever. I had learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to refuse to enable their dysfunction. Sometimes the best way to protect yourself is to walk away from people who would sacrifice your dreams for their convenience. And sometimes the family you choose, the mentors, friends, and supporters who believe in your potential, is more valuable than the family you were born into. I graduated summa cum laude, with a job offer from one of the top hospitals in the state. I had my own apartment, my own car, and most importantly, my own life. A life built on my choices, my hard work, and my refusal to be anyone's backup plan. The little girl who had once been my parents' emergency solution was thriving with her adoptive parents, who sent me photos occasionally through my aunt. She was happy, healthy, and loved by people who had actually chosen to be her parents. Madison was still figuring things out, but that was her journey to take, not mine to finance or fix. And my parents were learning, slowly and painfully, that love without respect is manipulation, and sacrifice without choice is exploitation. I never thought that standing up for myself would feel like such a radical act, but in a family that had trained me to prioritize everyone else's needs over my own, choosing myself was revolutionary. As I started my career as a pharmacist, I carried with me the knowledge that I had fought for my dreams and won. I had refused to let other people's poor choices become my lifelong burden. I had chosen my own future over their convenience, and for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I belonged. Not because someone else needed me there, but because I had worked to get there myself. The girl who once saved every penny for her education had learned the most valuable lesson of all. Sometimes the best investment you can make is in your own boundaries, your own dreams, and your own right to choose the life you want to live.